Welcome to the CT Educator Podcast. I am your host, Karina Hogan. I am a registered CT technologist with 20 years of experience and knowledge. I help new CT technologists level up their CT training so that you can become a successful technologist. I'm also a mom and committed to sharing my knowledge and expertise to help you build your confidence, know the CT basics so that you can deliver quality patient care. So let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. So hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful week. I have been extremely busy. The month of February, usually when spring is getting ready to come on, very, very soon. I just have a lot of things going on. Okay. So it has been a busy one for the CT educator and mom life, work life, all that stuff. So there's a lot of good things coming down the road for 2025, and I'm super excited about it. So just wanted to do a little housekeeping before we get into today's episode. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to join my live event, okay, if you are on my email list, I am going to go ahead and share the link where you can get free access to the replay of my live event. I talk about patient centering and how this is important and how to correct your mistakes when you are centering correctly for any type of CT exam. Okay. It was an awesome live event. So, and I also, went ahead and talked about my coaching program. I'm only taking 10 students. So there was a couple of bonuses if you attended the live event. But you only had 24 hours to sign up for the program. So now those bonuses are gone. Okay. So, but you could still join the 6-month coaching program that I have. I am only taking 10 students for this very first round. And you can get it at a founding member's price. So that's a little bit of an incentive there. So make sure you check out the show notes so you can get in on all the action, get all your questions answered. And of course, you can always send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram, and I would be happy to answer all of your questions. Okay. So also, the YouTube channel is live. We are doing awesome. There are videos up every week, how-tos, tutorial, Friday content where we do Tech Tip Friday, and also video content from this podcast that you can watch on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at the CT Educator. And as always, if you have an interesting CT story, something that's inspiring, something that's crazy, I would love to hear it. Make sure you send me an email. And I can read it on the show. So all good stuff. Make sure you check out the show notes for all the links, everything. Get in on my email list so you can get that replay of the live event. And make sure you're following me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok as well, okay? Because I do a lot of protocol videos. So make sure you get in on all the action as far as that. All right. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about what they don't teach you in your CT training. Now, I know I've done many episodes as far as if your CT education and your training was adequate. And I think we can all agree, everybody that's listening, it's not. There are no real structured programs. And that's why I built a coaching program to structure that education so that you feel comfortable out there scanning and working independently. So I know when I started CT 22 years ago, there wasn't a structured program. It was learn on the job. And if you learned well, you did. If you didn't, you picked up a lot of bad habits. I mean, that's just how it was. So I'm going to be giving you a few things on what they don't teach you in your CT training and how to adapt these principles into your training and your education while you're working independently out there. Now, we all know that CT is a very complex modality. I think I say this on every podcast episode. It's very complex, it's very challenging, and especially new techs that are coming in, whether they're students, whether they're transitioning from X-ray to CT, it's very challenging because it's a lot of moving parts and it's very different from X-ray. So there are three things that I feel that you don't get taught in your CT training. I don't feel it's getting taught in some of these CT programs that exist out there because those programs, in my own personal opinion, this is my opinion, guys, I think they just prepare you for the registry and don't give you the basics and the, core elements that you need to learn CT as a whole, because there is a lot of hands-on that you have to know. So the first thing that they don't teach you in your CT training is the framework you need to learn as a beginner. So let me kind of break that down. So the framework, like a checklist. Now, I have a free 8-week training checklist. Make sure you grab that in the show notes, okay? And I go step by step as far as what I feel you need to learn as a beginner. So the framework is, how do you set up your room? How do you look at different types of exams and protocols on the scanner? How do you do these MPRs and MIPs? What slice thickness? What is required for certain type of exams? What positioning? So just the framework and a checklist on, A, B, and C of the things that you need to know to make sure that your training is off to the right start and making sure that you can work independently, successfully. So, knowing where supplies are, how contrast media affects patients, the side effects, injection rates, why contrast has to be pushed at a certain ml per second. Those are the things that we need to know. And I don't think enough texts explain that. So there has to be a framework or a checklist when you are training. So I have devised something, that would help you in your training. And that's why I provide these resources for free as far as an 8-week training checklist. These are all the things that I feel and that I've seen, being a technologist as long as I have, that I think are just the core things that you need to know. Now, the second thing that they don't really teach you in your CT training is the basic common exams and how to master them. All right, I'm going to give you a few. So your CT of the head without contrast, that is the number one ordered exam in every hospital, every facility around the country, okay? Number 2 is your basic abdomen and pelvis CT with contrast. That is like second. And then the third exam is your CT PE study. If you can master all three of those, those are your bread and butter scans, guys, okay? Those are your basic core exams. Those are the things that get ordered the most. If you were to take a survey or take a tally of how many PE tests you do, how many abdomen and pelvises, and how many brain scans you do, it's fucking boring ass work, but you have to learn how to master those, position them correctly, make sure you inject contrast correctly, the amount of contrast, because it differs from facility to facility and patient to patient, okay? So they don't teach you enough on the basics, okay? They kind of just throw you in there and expect you to learn. That's not how we pump out good text, guys, okay? You have to give them the basics. That's why I stress on a checklist, on a framework. And the last piece of advice that I'm going to give you is contrast media and the safety and administration of contrast media. That is something that doesn't go in depth in your CT training. I think a lot of us just skip by and say, okay, we inject contrast. This is how we do it, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people like to ask why. Why is this the flow rate? Why are you doing this? Why do we need this type of IV? Why? And you have to be knowledgeable enough to answer all those questions, especially when you're training somebody new and has no idea, okay, or has limited knowledge because they don't know, okay? They may come from a small community hospital where they don't do that type of stuff, and they're at a bigger hospital and they need to learn how to do it correctly. So what I mean by contrast media is how it affects patients, what side effects are they going to feel, communicating with the patient and educating them on contrast media, making sure that you're administering it safely. So making sure you're checking those IVs, making sure that you are doing a saline test flush, making sure that you have proper enhancement on your exam. Those are kind of like the basic things that I don't feel like when we're training that the newer techs are really getting to know because we're leaving some of that stuff out. Like, we don't need to gatekeep. We need to teach them the right way because contrast can harm somebody. Contrast can kill patients. Contrast can, be devastating. So you have to make sure that we explain the A through Z on why we do things. Okay. These three common things are not taught enough in our CT training. And it's very, very vital. That's why I stress on my checklist. My checklist is 8 weeks of the things that you need to know. And week by week, I break it down as far as what you need to know as a technologist, especially if you're brand new and you're starting out, you don't have a lot of years of experience. Like, that is what you need. And knowing that your core exams are being done properly, being positioned and being scanned properly, and then making sure that your technologists have a framework. Make sure when they're transitioning into the department, you have a guide or a checklist or some kind of framework that they're going to work off of, that you're going to check them off and sign them off on. Because if they know how to do these correctly, it sets them up to make sure that they get all the competencies and make sure that they feel prepared to take that registry. Even though the registry is a little bit more in depth and you have to do more studying in the books because it's all, question book based physics and all that stuff. But when they're out there on the floor, you have to make sure that they can operate independently and successfully. So that is the three things that I don't feel we teach enough in our CT training when we're training new technologists. And this is what we can do to really do a better job in making sure that they are successful and they can work independently and be able to operate independently and work these shifts on their own, right? So that is all I have for you today as far as this episode. So make sure you check out the show notes. So I have that free 8-week CT training checklist. Make sure you go grab that, get on my email list. If you want to catch the replay and have access to the replay of my live event, make sure you click the link and sign up for that. And everything is in the show notes. Also, make sure to check out my 6-month CT training program. Well, actually coaching program, sorry. Since we were talking about training checklists. So make sure I'm taking 10 students. So go enroll in my program. It's good stuff. And you will get all the details on my coaching program. I pump out good techs. And I'll tell you, every tech that has trained under me has passed the registry the very first time. Okay. If you're a traveling CT tech, I also have a 90-day program where I kind of go over the basics on how to prepare you to take those travel assignments, the questions you need to ask, and some of the things that you probably will need to know so that you can scan on day one. Also, if you need just a, 90-day kind of like, oh, I need a refresher or I need to get up to speed or I need something, I also have another 90-day course where you can go ahead and sit down and I give you, some modules and some online on-demand learning. And I do some live teachings as well every single week. So you want all the details to all my programs and everything, make sure you check out the show notes. All good stuff, guys, okay? I encourage everybody because I don't gatekeep and I share my knowledge in all different ways. Also, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share this podcast episode to any technologist that needs to hear it too, because it keeps the show going. Also, follow me on TikTok and on Instagram at the CT Educator, where I drop knowledge, funny stuff, and just all the good CT things, okay? So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode, and I will chat with you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you would like to share your CT experience, have an interesting story to share, or need help in your CT training, please email me your questions at contact@thecteducator.com. follow along on Instagram at the CT Educator, also on Facebook at the CT Educator. Don't forget to like, share, leave a 5-star review, as this will help support the show and it'll reach all of you that need guidance. Thank you for listening and happy scanning.